In the middle of the Mediterranean, just north of Sardinia, sits a smaller island, home to a people who are extremely proud of their culture and traditions. It's a modern place, but has a rich history that goes back for millennia. The island, with its mix of steep mountains and sun-soaked beaches, has belonged to France for more than 200 years and is famous for being the birthplace of Napoleon Bonaparte. Welcome to Corsica, the island of beauty. Our itinerary will bring us all over the island. After a visit to the town of Bonifacio, we'll go on a drive through the Corsican countryside. In the north, we'll visit the city of Bastia, as well as Cap Corse, the peninsula jutting out toward Italy, before visiting Calvi and Porto, and finally returning to the imperial city of Ajaccio. Come join us on our all-inclusive tour of Corsica. Upon arrival, we have a great view of the beautiful city of Ajaccio. And who can resist Recanto Beach, located right within the city? Today, we'll visit Cote Chiavari, the historical site Filitosa, and the town of Bastelica. Before heading inland, we meet the group we'll be traveling with. Once we're all introduced, we're ready to start our trip. Driving through an age-old oak forest, we arrive at the small village of Cote Chiavari, frequently shrouded in fog. Today is no exception, but it only serves to add a certain mystique to the stone church. But the fog isn't the only reason for our driver to be careful on this road. Here, a herd of cows and their herder determine the speed limit. We are truly in the heart of the Corsican countryside. The fog dissipates as we approach the archaeological site of Filitosa. Discovered almost by accident 65 years ago, the site is a large complex of ruins left behind by a people who lived here from 6000 BC until Roman times. The first homes of the prehistoric inhabitants of Filitosa were shelters beneath rocks. Later, they constructed more sophisticated rock structures, the remains of which are still visible today on the plateau overlooking the site. Around their homes, the residents erected menhir statues with menacing faces. With their weapons carved into their backs, these megaliths represent the village warriors. It's a great place for a walk through these green hills so rich with history. The surroundings almost make us feel like we're back in the Stone Age. One last look at the megalithic warriors and thousand-year-old olive groves, and we head back into the 21st century on board our bus. Corsica's highest mountains are located in the geographical center of the island. We can't drive through the pretty town of Bastelica without stopping. We stretch out our legs and admire the statue of San Piero Corso, a 16th century Corsican nationalist. As Bastelica is known for its charcuterie, it's unsurprising to see a few pigs grazing on the side of the road heading out of town. On the way back to Ajaccio, we pass the highest waterfall in Corsica. Le Voile de la Mariée, or Bridal Veil Falls, is so named because it fans out as it falls, making the water look like fine lace over the sloping rock. After a peaceful night at the Hotel Castel Vecchio, we're back on the road toward the southern tip of Corsica. We'll return to explore more of Ajaccio at the end of our tour. For now, we set our course toward Bonifacio. After several kilometers surrounded by mountains and forest, it's a pleasure to see the shoreline come into view, with the Gulf of Valinco stretching beneath us. On the way to Bonifacio, we pass along Rocapina Bay, which looks all the more tantalizing because of its inaccessibility. The turquoise of the Mediterranean stretches to the horizon, lapping up against the sunny Corsican shores. There are no human developments nearby, only nature. And what kind of nature is more inviting than a warm beach? Regretfully, we leave these beaches behind for a bit of quiet contemplation. 5 kilometers outside of Bonifacio, the Hermitage of the Trinity is an oasis of calm up on the heights of Capo di Feno. It's been visited for centuries by pilgrims looking for inner peace in this natural setting. We can already catch glimpses of the red roofs of Bonifacio, a picturesque fortified town perched on cliffs 60 meters above the sea. With its 120 kilometers of shoreline, the canton of Bonifacio has no shortage of beaches. You can opt to swim in the Mediterranean Sea in the east or the Tyrrhenian Sea in the west. Bonifacio is also a great place for history buffs with its 1,000-year-old fortress. Founded in 830 by a noble from Pisa, Bonifacio was one of the first cities in Corsica. In the 12th century, it fell into the hands of the Republic of Genoa, and the Genoese conquerors built the old part of the city as we know it today, including the fortifications. The Bonifacio Citadel is enormous, a true sentinel of the Mediterranean. The massive stronghold occupies the entire headland of the peninsula. It probably marked the borders of the city before the arrival of the Genoese. We take a walk to have a closer look at the city. We stroll through the city streets in the shade of the fortifications with a lovely view of the sea. Exploring the narrow shopping streets, one street name in particular grabs our attention, the Street of the Two Emperors. The first was Charles Quint, who stayed on this street in 1541. The second is, of course, Napoleon Bonaparte, who stayed here in 1793. The Church of St. John the Baptist was built in 1775. It still houses the Brotherhood of the same name, composed of monks sworn to help the poor and the sick. The shady shopping streets are a perfect place to hide from the afternoon heat and to browse through the shops, cafes, and bistros. We indulge in a well-deserved ice cream, watching a game of pétanque, before continuing on to explore the nooks and crannies of Bonifacio. Under the Corsican flag that flies proudly from a balcony, we head toward one of the city's major attractions. When we catch sight of the bell tower and then the flying buttresses linking the buildings, we know that we've arrived. Sainte Marie Majeure is Bonifacio's main church, and probably its oldest as well. It's been standing in the city center since the 13th century. Before the doors of the citadel stands a bronze soldier, reminding us that the city is home to the first garrison of the Corsican Legion. It's time for supper, and we head for a port restaurant called L'Albatros. On the menu, seafood and traditional local dishes, including the delectable bouillabaisse. Satiated, we head for the Santa Teresa Hotel on the horizon. The 3-star hotel is located in a large 19th century house removed from the noise of the city. These tidy rooms are a perfect place to rest after a busy day. As the sun rises on Bonifacio, our group begins a second day in the city. The bus brings us to the port for a unique excursion. A boat is waiting in the shade of the city walls. The comfortable vessel will take us to explore the aquatic caves of the Bonifacio coast. From the water, we can see the lower town at the foot of the citadel, but we are drawn to the caves. Approaching Little Dragon Cave, the boat goes right in. We're surprised and enchanted to see that the opening that lets the light in is in almost exactly the same shape as the island of Corsica. Back out in the open air, we are eager to see more, and good thing too, because we're just getting started. Our captain steers the boat masterfully, despite the strong winds so typical of the southern coast of Corsica. Close to the cliffside lighthouse, we find ourselves in front of an interesting rock face. Our guide tells us that this cave is called Napoleon's Hat because of its shape, which resembles the emperor's famous bicorn.
Alors le chapeau de Napoléon, parce que si vous regardez les pourtours extérieurs, il nous rappelle le couvre-chef de l'empereur. Alors c'est le gouvernail de la Corse.
Further along the rock face is the immense rock called the Rudder of Corsica.
Position au sud de l'île, et la légende dit que si venait s'en détacher, la Corse serait ingouvernable.
The excursion also gives us an unobstructed view of the buildings of Bonifacio, firmly anchored on the sheer cliffs that plunge into the Mediterranean blue. Clearly, we have our sea legs on. We're in the open sea, and we have to brave the waves in order to see the spectacular geological formations. Thrilled with our adventure, we return to the port to continue exploring on dry land. We leave Bonifacio and head for Corte, taking the highway running through the center of the island. Under the blue skies, we take in the dense green countryside of the Corsican forest. Our bus climbs up into the mountains. At the center of the island, the undulating topography dictates the shape of the roads. The winding road will bring us to L'Ospedale, a village at the entrance to the forest of the same name, perfect for hiking. The breathtaking panorama over the Gulf of Porto Vecchio definitely deserves a stop. Weaving adeptly through the tall trees, we reach Zonza just in time for lunch. The street next to the memorial honoring the soldiers of the First World War is filled with charming little shops. Maybe you'd like to take home a stuffed boar's head as a souvenir? We head for the entrance of La Terrasse, a hotel restaurant that focuses on local products, including wild boar meat and chestnuts. We sit down and let our taste buds take over, allowing the kitchen to treat us to a true Corsican culinary experience. After lunch, the road calls us towards the Col de Bavella. At the entrance, the statue of the Notre-Dame des Neiges stands atop a rock shrine. It seems that the Holy Virgin appeared at this spot in the middle of winter in the 18th century. Pilgrims have been coming to leave a token of devotion ever since. Through the pines, we can see the majestic rocky peaks called the Needles of Bavella. Heading down Larone Pass, we stop for a small hike to another panorama of the valley and surrounding mountains. Looking at the region's topography, we can easily understand why the symbol of Corsica is the mountain sheep, the only animal able to walk freely through these steep mountains. Back on the road, we come to a city with houses that seems to have grown right out of the side of a mountain. This is the charming city of Corte, where we will spend the night. This is the city that Corsican nationalist Pasquale Paoli named the capital of independent Corsica. We'll learn more about him later. For now, after a long day in the mountain air, we just want to check into our hotel and leave the historical discoveries for tomorrow. With its 31 cozy rooms and its friendly owner, San Piero Corso di Corte Hotel makes us feel right at home. But it's not bedtime yet. All that hiking has worked up an appetite, and we choose a restaurant that has a tasting menu of Corsican specialties. At this start of our second day in Corte, we're off to explore the town after saying goodbye to our friendly hotel owner. This morning, we'll trade our bus for a little train. The train lets us see all the monuments up close. Here, we have a good view of the statue of Pasquale Paoli, with no windows to get in our way. As we gain altitude, we get a superb view of the houses of Corte with the mountains in the distance. The train lets us reach the upper town without having to break a sweat. It winds easily through the narrow alleys of Corte. A few short stops allow us to get a taste of daily life in this picturesque town. And there's nothing better than sightseeing with the breeze blowing through our hair. However, for longer trips, the bus is indispensable. We're driving northeast, heading for the region of Castagniccia. We can make out a village in the far-off mountains. It's Morosalia, the birthplace of Pasquale Paoli. In 1755, the father of the Corsican homeland gave his people a constitution inspired by the Enlightenment, long before either the French or the American Constitution came into being. Paoli is buried at the house where he was born, which has been transformed into a museum. We'll follow this wandering cow out of Morosalia and get back on the road to Castagniccia. This mountainous region is named for its forests, full of chestnut trees. With an average altitude of 1,000 meters, the only way to reach Castagniccia is through these meandering roads winding through green forests. We pass through Piedi Croce, a community right at the heart of the region. There is a 17th century church in the middle of Piedi Croce that's worth a detour. The Church of St. Peter and St. Paul stands tall over the valleys with its Baroque facade and its square bell tower. Inside, the light color of the walls serves to accentuate the superb ceiling frescoes as well as the Baroque detailing. We continue our way through Castagniccia. The bus drives by the ruins of the old convent of Orezza, built in the 15th century and destroyed during the Second World War. We drink in our last few minutes in the cool shade of the forest, because when we get out, we'll be in the sunny coastal city, Bastia. Here we are overlooking the port of Bastia. The city is breathtakingly beautiful, located on the side of a 900-meter high mountain right on the sea. The second largest city in Corsica, it's also one of the most intriguing. The memorial to fallen soldiers stands in Place Saint-Nicolas, one of the largest squares in France. Close to the harbor is the Tower of Casabianca. This submarine is famous for having escaped from occupied France in 1942 to continue the fight against the Germans. The Casabianca went on to play an important role in the liberation of Corsica a year later. Bastia's City Hall is surrounded by swaying palm trees that give the city a tropical flavor. A sculpture pays tribute to members of the resistance that pushed back against the occupying forces. Like in Corte, we opt to take a little train to visit Terra Vecchia, the old town close to the port. In Bastia, the newest part of the city is located within the fortifications, up on the headland. The train lets us off at the entrance to the citadel so we can take a stroll through Terra Nova district. The Santa Maria Assumpta Cathedral has been standing here since the 17th century. Situated within the citadel ramparts, the cathedral is a majestic example of Baroque architecture. The church is just as beautiful on the inside, with a magnificent old organ and stained glass windows. Walking through the streets inside the citadel with its tall, brightly colored houses, we breathe in the sea air. Not far from the cathedral, the Holy Cross Oratory hides behind a sober facade, but you can't judge a book by its cover. Inside the chapel, we find some of the best examples of Baroque detailing in all of Corsica. Terra Nova is truly a city within a city. Bastia's residents have been living in these historic houses since the 14th century. Before leaving the citadel, we stop in front of the governor's palace, completed in 1530. It is now home to the city's ethnographic museum. Leaving Terra Nova, we wait for our ride to pick us up at the citadel door. Our faithful little train brings us back to Terra Vecchia, past the Church of St. John the Baptist for a last look at Bastia. Bastia is the gateway to Cap Corse, the outcropping of land that juts into the sea from the northeast side of the island. We'll be exploring the region of Cap Corse next, but first we spend a restful night at the U Ricordu Hotel in Masinaggio. This 3-star establishment has a sparkling pool and an excellent view of the mountains. Under clear skies, we head off to Cap Corse in search of adventure, soothed by the voice of our driver, Jean-Pierre. As well as giving us a taste of traditional Corsican music, Jean-Pierre steers the bus through the winding roads like a master, offering us unparalleled views of the ocean. At the very northern edge of the peninsula, we turn around. We'll make stops in Pino and Nonza before turning west and heading for Calvi. On the western shores of Cap Corse, we take a stop in the village of Pino on the Mediterranean coast. We take a drink from a fountain dedicated to the former mayor. Back on the bus, we follow the Mediterranean toward Nonza, where we will eat lunch. These narrow roads require the full concentration of the drivers, not to mention a healthy dose of patience and courtesy. The village of Nonza is situated on the side of a mountain on the western coast of Cap Corse. Perched on a rocky outcropping, Nonza overlooks the Mediterranean. At the top of the cliff, Pasquale Paoli had a tall guard tower built on the ruins of a medieval fortress. While it looks similar to the Genoese towers that dot the Corsican coast, the locals insist on calling it not Genoese, but Paolian. Unlike other communities in Cap Corse, Nonza is not divided into an old town and a new town. Its buildings have been grouped together in a single small cluster since the Middle Ages. The town is perfumed by abundant flowers mixed with the scent of the salty sea air. What a perfect place for a walk before lunch. Our tummies rumbling, we head for a restaurant with a name that means the donkeys laugh. Seated on the shady terrace, we share a selection of tasty dishes, gathering our forces for the ground we have to cover before arriving in Calvi. Our bellies full, we leave Nonza and Cap Corse and head for the Balagne region. Following the sea westward, we admire the superb Gulf of Saint-Florent before passing through the village of the same name. After another few kilometers on the Mediterranean coast, we reach Calvi in the northwest corner of Corsica. The city sprang up around its port, which is precisely where we'll start our visit. A war memorial occupies the place of honor before the entrance to the citadel. Nearby, an amazing plaque at the base of the ramparts informs us that Christopher Columbus was born in Calvi, when the city was ruled by Genoa in 1451. Officially, the birthplace of the famous explorer is uncertain, but no one dares to contradict the residents of Calvi. Built in the 13th century by the Genoese on a rocky hill, the citadel is home to a number of government and religious buildings. Its one and only point of entry leads us into a maze of picturesque streets embellished with Mediterranean flora. From the top of the citadel, we have a perfect view of the port and surrounding area. While it does indeed have a tranquil side to it, the citadel is not strictly an oasis of calm. Calvi is also a tourist destination with lively shopping streets offering up tasty snacks and affordable souvenirs. A bit further up, we reach the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, built first in the 13th century and then rebuilt in the 16th century in the classic Baroque style. The rich decorations that adorn the cathedral walls bear witness to Calvi's glorious past. Continuing our exploration of the citadel, our next destination is the Caserne San Piero, the former residence of the Genoese governor. Built in 1510, the Oratory Saint-Antoine is home to the Brotherhood of Monks of the same name. It comes alive at Easter time when a procession carries Christ on the cross through the streets of Calvi. After admiring local street art, we leave the citadel to continue our visit outside the fortifications. As the setting sun illuminates the city's rooftops, we'll eat at Calvi's Grand Hotel, which is also where we'll spend the night. The sun rises on the citadel of Calvi. We eat breakfast in the hotel dining room before getting on the bus to drive down the west coast of Corsica. The Scandola Nature Reserve and the city of Porto await. We leave early as it's going to be a busy day. Jean-Pierre offers us another song from his repertoire of traditional Corsican music. We're heading toward Porto, in the mountainous region on the border between Haute-Corse and Corse du Sud. From the top of Col de Palmarella, we have an impressive view of the Scandola Reserve below. The reserve is a conservation zone for both terrestrial and marine flora and fauna. As the mountains here reach over 1,000 meters in altitude, the best way to visit the reserve is by boat, as we'll soon discover. We drive on the narrow mountain passes toward Girolata. It goes without saying that the efforts and skill of Jean-Pierre, our tuneful driver, are much appreciated. We arrive in Girolata just in time for lunch. A good meal will put us in a good mood for the rest of the drive to Porto. From Girolata, it's only a few kilometers to Porto. However, those few kilometers take us on some extremely steep cliffs. With rocky overhangs above and precipitous drops below, we have one more hairpin turn, and here we are in Porto. In the port, we head up to the Genoese tower that has overlooked the Gulf for over 500 years. This is one of only 4 square Genoese towers on the island. Perhaps Porto doesn't have the same historical richness as Ajaccio, but its natural environment is exceptional, making it a must-see. The beach is delightful, on the shore of a calm bay, a few steps away from the marina. Its shiny pebbles are so appealing, we stop here to take in the sun, the scent of eucalyptus in the air and the warm waves rolling up on the beach. Back in the port, our boat awaits. It's time to visit the Scandola Reserve that we glimpsed from the mountaintops earlier. Comfortably seated and refreshed by the sea breeze, we leave the Gulf of Porto and head for the shores of the Scandola Reserve. The jagged coastal cliffs were formed by volcanic activity and are tinged red with rhyolite. With the blue sea below and the green hills behind, it's a breathtaking landscape. Eroded by water and time, these cliffs are marvels of nature, falling almost vertically into the sea. Our boat enters a cave of crystal clear water. The seabeds are full of coral, lobsters, and rare fish that are protected here in the Scandala Reserve. We take in the sea air and the incomparable view of the shores before returning to Porto. Back on dry land, we take the time to wander through the shops along the sea. Porto is first and foremost a seaside resort where the main industry is tourism, followed by livestock farming. Porto is part of the village of Ota, which sits higher up on the mountain. This evening, we leave our bags at Hotel Le Porto, which prides itself on being the best vantage point for the beautiful Corsican sunsets. With its 30 air-conditioned rooms and its view of the mountains and the sea, this is Corsican hospitality at its best. We end our day with a hearty meal and a glass of rosé. The sun rises on Porto, and we're already heading out to discover the surrounding region. First, we'll stop to get a good look at the Calanque de Piana, a group of high peaks of red granite that have been carved down by erosion, falling vertiginously into the sea. Legend has it that the Calanque were formed when the devil himself flew into a rage. Our bus heads inland for a moment before returning to the coast towards our next destination. Halfway between Porto and Ajaccio, Carcese welcomes us. Founded by Greek immigrants, this lovely town has the distinction of having an Orthodox church standing directly across from a Latin church. The Latin church is called the Church of the Assumption, recognizable by its four-sided bell tower. The interior is decorated in the Baroque style with trompe-l'œil paintings. Across the valley, St. Spiridon is a Greek Orthodox church. Inside are some superb examples of Greek iconography that were brought here from Greece by the first inhabitants of Cargese. The church was built in a neoclassical style. Like every Corsican town, the fishing village of Carcese also has a war memorial. But time is flying, and we have a date with the city of Ajaccio. We take a welcome break to taste some local products. Corsica has many culinary specialties. Figatello is the island's best-known charcuterie. Made of pork and garlic, it's a fresh sausage with a distinctive taste. The town is also proud of its Niolo and Briccio, two cheeses made with raw sheep and goat milk. With our taste buds awakened, we are eager to reach Ajaccio. And here we return to the place where our adventure began, the imperial city of Ajaccio. Officially founded in 1492, the year that Christopher Columbus first set foot in the New World, Ajaccio owes its glory to the Bonaparte family, which gave France her most famous emperor. Another member of the family was a famous patron of the arts, Cardinal Cardinal Fesch, a maternal uncle of Napoleon, left his palace to the city filled with his vast art collection. The palace was then transformed into the Ajaccio Museum of Fine Arts. The city is lively, and we opt to explore it on foot, wandering through the pedestrian shopping streets. After some window shopping, we head for Place Foch, formerly known as La Place des Palmiers. A statue of Napoleon stands in the center in his imperial robes. At the end of a palm tree-lined street, we find the Lantivy Palace, home of the Corsican prefecture, as well as the bright pink Ajaccio City Hall. In Place Foch, a statue of the Madonuccia has been protecting the city since 1656. Our group heads up a side street that leads to the house where Napoleon was born. The building now belongs to the French government and is home to a museum dedicated to the celebrated Bonaparte family. A nearby square bears the name of Napoleon's mother. At the end of a lane, the ochre-colored cathedral of Our Lady of the Assumption dazzles us. This is where the emperor was baptized. The interior is quite splendid. The cathedral is dedicated to the Virgin who spared the village from the plague epidemics. The massive organ was recently restored and is still used today. We head to the port, where we find the monument honoring members of the resistance. Ajaccio was the first French city to be liberated during the Second World War. We hop onto an open-air bus to take a tour of the city. What an effortless way to take in the sights. We get to see the best panoramas of the city, driving up the Route des Sanguinaires that heads down the southern coast of the city. We pass by Saint-François Beach with its fine sand and warm water. On the side of the hill, the Ajaccio Cemetery holds the remains of singer Tino Rossi, who was born in the city. We take the time to drink in the Mediterranean sun and the delicious sea air of the Corsican capital. As our itinerary on the Island of Beauty draws to an end, we take one last look at the silhouette of the Genoese towers and head down a dock to look out to sea one last time. After getting a closer look at the island of Corsica, we better understand the mix of cultures and heritage that have made it into what it is. In a magnificent landscape where the mountains meet the sea, this jewel of the Mediterranean has revealed many of her glistening facets. And so we head off into the world, our heads full of incomparable images and flavors from the countryside of Corsica and from its city so full of history. I hope you'll come along on our next adventure on the joy of touring.